From the Middle is a founding member of the Odd Pods Media Network.
Oh, for the love.
Sorry, just clearing my Mountain Dew hole.
I got my phone hole cleaned today.
That's where you keep it? You're so cerebral and you're so developed and evolved.
From the Middle after dark over here.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to episode 84 of From the Middle. We are three middle-class guys in the middle of America, in the middle chapters of our lives, with a point of view somewhere in the middle. And if you're listening or tuning in for the first time, or you're relatively new, this is kind of an all catch-all comedy and culture podcast with three guys who just like to talk about the things they enjoy. Sometimes that's nerd culture, sometimes that's sports, sometimes that's family and our funny little stories about our lives. So
Sometimes it's cake.
sometimes it's mashed potatoes. We're a little bit all over the board as long as it's delicious or entertaining. But this is episode 84 from the Middle, and we have a special guest today, Katie Berkheimer from Kindness Batters. Go ahead and say hi.
Hi, guys.
Now, I get the pleasure of introducing you. So Kindness Batters is your is a small, how would you best describe a small, it's not small time, but that can also be good because it's unique bakery, baked goods, cakes. What's the best way you describe yourself?
I would definitely say I'm a home baker. I think that's kind of where I fall. Now I do try to put out like high quality baked goods, especially when it comes to my cakes and cupcakes. The decorating part is really important to me. And so, yeah, I'm definitely a home baker, but kind of moved from hobby to more professional. Yeah.
And that's a really good way to describe yourself. And then I get to come in because you undersold it. So I get to come in and say, like, when you see the shows, like the professional baking shows on like TLC and like those networks that are doing like crazy good, like multi-layered crazy design cakes, like you might sell yourself as home baker, but like the quality, and we'll do some photos if you're on the YouTube stream for this episode, we'll do some photos later, but the quality of what you do is incredibly good. But there's something important I like to note there, because anytime you're like recommending something like that, a baker, somebody for a wedding, somebody for a birthday, some people can make cakes look incredible. And then even much smaller niche of those people can make them look incredible and actually taste incredible. And you're able to find that sweet spot, pun intended, of both of those things. If you're watching on YouTube or you want to hop over to YouTube, go ahead and check out what's on screen. But lots of people, I've had really, really good looking cakes before that just taste average. Yeah. And yours tastes fantastic. And you're at 100%. I don't know if you've ever entertained the idea of some of these professional baking shows, but like 100% you should do it, because that's the quality of not only the look, but also the taste. And so that's what I appreciate. That's what I appreciate about you. And just as a total sidebar, you happen to be Corey and I's sister. Yeah. So another nice qualification there. So do you feel like I oversold it against your undersell?
Oh, I'm so grateful. I mean, I think that is equally as important to me as the taste. I just hope it tastes amazing as well as looks amazing. I mean, that's, like you said, you can have a really cool looking cake and it be, oh, that was okay, but people, are so, I mean, the taste of a cake is such a personal thing. And so, everyone has like their grandma or their mom or their wife or their dad or their brother, and they make, this awesome cake, whether it's like a chocolate cake, that's, grandma's chocolate cake. And so I think, I don't know that I can always access that part of taste for someone, that memory or that, very personal feeling of that, but I do hope that they walk away and they think, wow, that was really yummy and it looked awesome. That's always what I strive for sure. There's definitely this quality and time that I take to put into the taste of the cake as well as what it looks like. So thank you. That was really kind.
Well, we've certainly talked about nostalgia being powerful because we've gushed over dollar bean burritos from Taco Bell on this podcast.
Right?
So like it's all relative. But if you show up and you're a stranger and you're trying something, you don't expect your grandmother's whatever. So
Right.
I think people are can be a little more forgiving, but I think that's certainly if they're asking you for something specific and you're making them something specific custom, that
Yeah.
might be where they're probably thinking more about the specific thing they grew up with or they love versus if I just get to show up at a wedding and enjoy something, I can go, wow, that's incredible because there's nothing in it for me. I'm just there to enjoy.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I have to interject here because I want to continue to paint the picture for folks. Speaking of cakes that we grew up with, I think most of us had somebody in our family in the 90s, like maybe an aunt who could make cakes like this,
Yep.
where it was like what do you call that, Katie, that technique? Is that just like piping the characters onto a sheet cake?
Yeah, I mean, it's a star tip that they, take their little and star tip it. And yeah, I mean, I love that. I think it's so fun, like on a sheet cake. And, I have fond memories of flipping through the books at like the
Yes.
local grocery store, picking what, sugar sheet transfer was going to get
Yes.
put on or plastic toy. So
a
yeah.
lot of us had somebody in our family maybe that at one point gave us an Elmo cake like this, but yours are just like works of art that also happen to taste delicious. So
Thank you.
we're kind of sharing that Sonic one that you did is one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah, I have two little boys that are 5 and a daughter that's 3. And so they're like the harshest critics when it comes to any character cake or really just anything. I mean, they are my taste testers and they are brutally honest. So it's always good to have, the critics that have the constructive criticism that can be helpful. But yeah, we have some Sonic fans in our house. And so getting the characters right when it's something very well known. And for us, it's nostalgic because it goes back to our childhood as well. And then with the recent movie that came out, my kids loved it. So it was fun sharing that with them, but also you feel that extra pressure of this better look like Sonic.
Can you think of one of the things that they've said, like that surprised you as a critic, as a 5-year-old critic?
Oh, my one son, Clark, he has a great palate. He can taste and identify things that, me being 35, I'm like, how did you know that? But I had actually left out like half the butter in one of my cream cheese icings, and he tried it and he said, this is not right. Like he knew immediately that it didn't taste bad, but it wasn't correct. And so to have him, be able to be kind of like that, what is it? Quality assurance.
Quabby.
Yeah. So he's very honest, but they're also like my biggest fan too, because for his birthday, I did a sculpted bust of Jack from Nightmare Before Christmas and Jack Skellington. And that was for his birthday. And he was really particular and I got it done and I thought it looked really cool and he loved it. But then he immediately started saying, oh, where are the arms and where's the legs and where? So, well, they're my biggest fans. They're also always pushing me to do a little more and, make it a little more impressive. So,
Wow.
Well, we're going to get more into sort of the business side of Kindness Batters and your process and like the heartbeat behind it. But you already started with your family, like for the two of us that already know you, that's great. But for our listeners, tell us a little bit more about yourself, your bio and background, and as much as you want.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, I'm a mom to 2 little boys. They're twins. They're 5 years old. And then I have a daughter who's 3, and they're just like really such precious people. Like truly, they challenge me to be a better person, a better baker, a better mom, like every single day. And then my husband, Chad, he is an Air Force veteran and he works in logistics right now. So he's home working most of the time. So he gets to share in the craziness of life working at home. So he's been the biggest support for Kindness Batters and kind of transitioning from just kind of offering cakes to family and some close friends to really putting my baked good out there for the world. And so he's awesome. He does a lot of the bookkeeping and shopping, and he also throws in his 2 cents. Though he doesn't have quite the vision my kids have when it comes to cakes. But he's really, really great. And yeah, I mean, as far as hobbies other than baking, I would say I like to think of myself as kind of a DIYer. I love home renovating and fun little projects here and there. I kind of have renovated our entire house this past year, being home. So there's not many rooms that have gone untouched in my house. So that's kind of been a fun creative outlet, because baking cakes and being creative in that sense, I kind of need an outlet where I can feel a little more free and less pressure to do something perfectly. So it's kind of a fun area that I've been able to definitely just spend some of that creative energy without the pressure of producing something amazing. But yeah, I kind of dabble in a lot of things. I do love superheroes. My son's name is Clark, after Clark Kent, Superman. So, though, I mean, I would say I follow Marvel just as much as I follow the DC comic books and things like that. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I can definitely talk about it, and I definitely have opinions.
Well, you knew you had to hit on the geek culture piece, and
Right.
you were like a big Smallville fan, and so
Yes.
like I know you're all up on like the CW, WB superhero shows, and love those a lot. But
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's spilled off onto your kids and our nephews and niece, and so that's really fun that we get to sort of live vicariously through them when we give them gifts and do artwork for them and things like that. So it's fun for us to pass on the love of geek culture to another generation of kiddos.
Definitely. I mean, my kids are in that spot of, they're aged where they are excited about superheroes and Legos and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's like, I don't know, it's really fun. And my daughter, I think growing up with brothers, you kind of are into, I was girly, but I was also kind of into sports and kind of into video games and kind of into superheroes. And so it's fun to have boys and girls, because my daughter's definitely the same way. She loves Wonder Woman. I mean, I think, believes she is Wonder Woman.
Of course.
And so yeah, it's definitely fun. And even when I have cakes and things that are, along the lines of Legos or superheroes, I really enjoy that, because it's, just there's that special spot in my heart for stuff like that. So for sure.
And if they stick with it, they can have a podcast when they're 36 years old about
Right.
There you go.
That's awesome. So how do you fall in love with baking? And like, what was sort of we've talked a lot with a lot of our guests about how they eventually found their passion, and whether that be their day job or not, like, how did you start narrowing the focus to like creating delicious treats for people in baking, and sort of where you are now, like the road that led you to ultimately do it as a hobby, but then eventually start Kindness Batters?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, well, not a lot, I can't really speak for everybody's story of how they get to their passion, but for some people it's very clear and linear, and you can see, I look at some of these kids on some of these baking championship shows and I'm like, my goodness, like they know, whether they stick with it or not. I mean, they are like very invested in that. And I definitely had zero idea that, when I was even in college, that this is something that I would be interested in or, doing on a professional level. And so as I look back, though, I can see these kind of like hints of, oh, this might be something you do someday. Because while I was horrible in like home economics in school, I think I complained about like every baking project we had to the teacher and every sewing project. Like I ruined all the sugar cookies one day. I mean, it was really bad. There were other things that kind of hinted towards this path of baking and so forth. And so one of those things was my first babysitting job. The mom of the kids I babysat, she used to compete in different, like at different fairs and things like that in the local level, decorating cakes. And so sometimes I would go over to the house and babysit the kids while she had some of these competition cakes to decorate. And I was like mesmerized by that. I thought it was so cool. But I didn't really think it was something that I could do. And I remember her looking at me one day and being like, I'll teach you. And I thought, I can't do this. Like, I don't think I'm able to learn. So it's funny now, I don't think I consciously thought of that when I decided to do cupcakes and cakes and things like that. But now looking back, it's definitely something I kind of chuckle about. And also my great great granny, she was a baker. And it just makes me smile to think that even though I was very young when we lost her, I feel a connection to her in that way. And so it's kind of cool to feel like it's in my blood in some sense, and gives me that confidence to kind of, know that this might be part of my destiny of who I am. And it just is very special to me. But as far as my clear path to when I started baking, I grew up, my first job was working at a local coffee shop, and they had amazing coffee drinks and lunch items and things like that. But they also had a bakery, and the baker was this really sweet lady. Her name was Mary, and her mom was in her 80s at the time, made all of like the amazing breads and pies and cheesecakes and things like that. And they decided that they kind of were in a position where they needed a little more help. And so they asked the owners of the coffee shop if they could pick an employee to kind of help aid them in whatever. So they chose me to kind of help with that. And I had just moved back home from a job I had out of college in Vermont. And so I already had a degree, and I already was searching for like some other type of position and job and vocation. And they're like, oh, you're just going to help them wash their dishes or take things out when the timer goes off or whatever, refill the flour. I don't know. And I thought, all right, I'll do that. But when I got down there, my first day, Eloise, the mom of the bakers, she said, oh no, you're baking. So they taught me everything. I mean, I would say their style of baking was truer to like Amish baking. And so it was really fun to learn kind of the whole, like everything about baking. But the one area that they didn't really do anything in was, decorative and custom cupcakes and cakes. And so one Valentine's Day, I had been watching Ace of Cakes and Cake Boss. Like this was during that time when those shows were really popular. And I thought, I'm going to make some cupcakes. And Cupcake Wars, I think I had been watching.
Yeah.
So I made cupcakes, and they
Buddy
had like,
Belastro, is he the guy from Cake Boss? We watched a lot of that show.
yeah, Buddy, and then Duff. Like I love Duff. He's like amazing. But I thought I'm going to make these chocolate cupcakes and try to sell them. So I took them in and I decorated them with little fondant hearts, and they sold out like immediately at the coffee shop. And so from then on, it just kind of like unfolded that way of, just people kept asking, are you going to have cupcakes? Are you going to have cakes? Can you do cakes? So I kind of learned on the fly, and I learned a lot from those shows, which was both awesome. And, there was part of me that's like, I had no idea what I was doing. And then when I got married is when we moved to a different city, and I worked a different job at the courthouse in Franklin County, and kind of kept up with some baking here and there, just, like, hey, I do cakes, if you ever need a cake. But I would say 2 years ago is when it got really serious. I had just had my third child, and when you're home, you're always kind of looking for ways to be creative or, supplement income that was lost because I had quit my job at the courthouse to stay home with my kids. And so that's when it really hit me, like, Kindness Batters was something that had been in my heart for a long time, and it just kind of seemed like a very good time to really make it official and, offer it to other people.
No.
So first question that I have is on the Sonic cake that that Corey had mentioned.
Yeah.
Are Sonic's eyes touching?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to see
Back.
are they supposed to be touching?
I don't know. I just know that that's a topic. That's a
I
thing
know.
we've talked about before.
Right. And okay.
Perfect.
They're like they're
Yes.
supposed to be. There was a big issue when the movie came out.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
There
Oh.
you go.
That I know. And it was a big issue in my household when my son, he was Sonic this year for Halloween, and I did his makeup for that. And he was very specific about the eyes. So I don't know if he's been listening to you guys, but he's
yeah.
It feels like he has a lot of Corey and Dylan in his life.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Even with the break of, not seeing them as often as we would like to, I'm just like, oh my goodness, like he's so affected by what Corey and Dylan like.
Sorry. So sorry.
I remember when you were really ramping things up, and we might have had this conversation, we might not have. At the time, I was doing technology consulting for various sizes of companies, and one thing that the folks doing what I was doing at the time, we had all discussed, we did all this kind of outreach to these companies all the time, and then they would reach out to us, and we'd have to set meetings and chat through whatever we needed to chat through.
Yeah.
But I just remember thinking, I can't believe how many people have businesses that don't do two things, that don't communicate or answer the phone. I don't know how you have a business and you don't answer the phone or you don't reply to emails. And people that don't deliver through on the things they say they're going to do as their product or service.
Mhm.
It's incredible how many, like, those are the two, like, you have to be able to work with people and communicate somewhere or the other, and you have to deliver on the thing. And I remember you like really like taking it more seriously or ramping it up or however you wanted to kind of think about it, and just thinking she will be phenomenal at both of those things. She will 100% succeed, because I'm working with these companies all the time that can't do those two things that are critical to not even like next level success, just like the core, and they can't even get those things down. And I'm like, not only will she be awesome with people, but she's going to deliver on exactly what she's saying she's going to do, and she's going to do it on time and correctly. And so I had that kind of flashback to that thought. I don't know if we discussed it, but it was certainly a thought that I had that I'm like, it's gonna for sure. Like this will blow up as big as she wants it to be, or it'll stay as small and boutique as she wants it to be, because she's gonna have the control over or how much she wants to do and how well she succeeds at it.
Well, thank you. I mean, that means a lot to me. And I know there's always room for improvement because with a home baker, you're kind of doing everything. I mean, you are the one that answers the emails or the phone call. You are the one editing pictures or taking pictures. You're the one doing the grocery shopping, the hand wash dishes, everything. I mean, getting the boxes ready, just every little detail. It's like you kind of have to be all things at once and yet know that there's always room for improvement, you know. And for me, I think I had to come to this realization that all I can offer is who I am to people. And that's where the kindness batters kind of came into play, because it was this challenge for myself of like, I am going to be interacting with people, you know, and that's a large part of what I do is the communication and talking to people. And I hoped going into it that by like naming my business with kindness in it, that it would be a challenge and a call to myself when connecting to humankind, you know, when connecting with my customers or other people online, that if this is the message I'm going to be putting out there about my cakes and who I am, that's the message I want front and center, not only for other people, but for myself. Like that's important. You know, the kindness aspect of it is important. You know, you have really talented people who don't really want to do the people person thing. And that's totally fine. But for me, that was definitely the heart behind Kindness Batters was I think I have something to offer people and I think it'll make the world a little happier in my little corner of the world. And I want to do that, you know, like cake is already happy enough, but you want people to have a good experience with, you know, who you are. And so that's incredibly important to me for sure.
I love that. And it reminds me of, you know, you talk about cakes and the happiness of cakes. There's a Dimitri Martin joke where he says, cakes are the only food we write on. It's always so encouraging, like, happy birthday, Leo. Congratulations, Eric. I feel like we're missing an opportunity. I'm talking about negative cakes.
Yes.
Surprise, you're adopted. Because that's when you want cake.
Oh, I mean, there's definitely people who have branded themselves with like negative cakes, and it kind of makes me laugh. I mean, as much as I like to be positive and kind, it's like sometimes kindness is found in truth. I don't know.
That's awesome.
Like that one commercial with the girl, and I don't know what company was being sold, so I don't know how successful it was. But the girl makes the cake and says she quits. And she's going to be a full-time baker. So
I love that. And I know how much thought you put into the brand, right? And, you know, it's fun to joke about. And obviously that's not your niche to do negative cakes, but you put so much thought into the brand. But like, what challenges or fear or whatever did you experience going from hobby to like, I really want to do this, right? Because there's a lot of inertia to overcome in going from I do this on the side for friends and family to I view this as a way to make some supplemental income. And I think it's relevant now because we've talked a lot on this podcast about the gig economy and these underground pizza places. And, you know, for those that are at home or they've lost income because of the coronavirus, I think that talking a little bit about that from your perspective might be helpful. Like, and I know you didn't build your business during coronavirus, you did it, you know, beforehand, but like, what was some of that journey? Because I think that there might be good learning in there for folks who have a passion or have a side hobby and people around them are telling them, you should really sell this, or you should really turn this into a business. And then all that stuff that comes into their mind.
Right. I mean, I think that is, you know, so important. And you see a lot of people, like you said, during the pandemic, looking for ways to do that. And so for me, it was a lot of family and friends support of people being like, hey, if you do this, you know, we will support you. We will get the word out. We will, whatever you need, And so personally, I'm so grateful for that, for people that were willing to kind of come alongside me and say, I have this advice to offer, or this, channel to offer to get the word out about you. Just let me know what and when. And so for me, I think there's people who have things to offer and they operate under this like idea of like scarcity, like there's not going to be a customer, there's not going to be enough there, and I think that's a very real fear for people, that, oh, I might sell a bunch and then run out of people to sell to, and I think that's definitely something to consider for whatever product or service you're offering, because times are hard right now for a lot of people, and there is that very real fear that I may invest a bunch of into this and it may not work, right? And so I think it's definitely good to kind of step back. And what I did was I, thought, for me, I operated under the impression of like, I feel a little overwhelmed. Like I am one person also, to the extreme. I am one person. I can only do so much. I am still a full-time mom to 3 little kids who very much need me, and have a household to take care of. And so I think you really have to step back and have an honest look at what will work for you, right? Like I can't stay up, for 48 hours straight working on orders, right? I have to prioritize my children. I have to prioritize my husband, my household, my family, myself, And so I think, first you have to look at what's practical for you and then kind of go from there. How much can I take on? And you can always take on more or kind of, pull back a little bit. But I would say really taking an honest look at like what's feasible for you and your family, or you and your lifestyle. So yeah, I think that's definitely where you start.
Cool. We're going to hear a quick word from one of our friends in the Odd Pods Media Network, and we will be back with Katie Berkheimer of Kindness Batters.
Here at the 500 Section Lounge, we have a few requirements. First, you need to be able to talk about anything at all. Secondly, you need to be able to laugh, play games, and hang out with some very interesting people. From sports radio personalities to reality television contest finalists and everything in between, we talk to them all right here in the lounge. Be on the lookout for what we do next and sit back, relax, and be there to grab a listen.
Obviously, like I said, understanding what you can take on is really important. Knowing your family, your lifestyle, all of that. The other thing would be, and Corey can kind of probably speak to this as well, having people who have been there or are going through it, from that transition to hobby to, whatever type of vocation, or offering it on a professional level. It's important to have people in your life who can kind of help you through a lot of it, and in practical ways, as far as I don't know how to make an invoice. I don't know what payment system would be good for whatever goods or services that I'm offering. There's just a lot that goes into it. I mean, like I said before, you have to be the photographer and the photo editor. I mean, that matters to people when you're putting your stuff, especially if you're using an online platform to sell that. And so I think, and yeah, like I said, Corey can probably speak a little bit more about that with his Hubble Arts, but that's really important as well. And I'm grateful I had Corey during that time to kind of offer advice, and even like Dylan, as far as like a business side of it. I mean, he's, been in sales, and it matters how you sell yourself, your brand, your product. It matters to people. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would absolutely double down on the like having a network of people that have done it before, or mentors that have done it before. And I had so many people in my life that were freelance artists that I was just like, what do you charge for stuff? And like, how do you invoice? And do you need an agent? And do I got to get a tax guy? And like, I'm a sole proprietor, so how do I do like the how do I do my taxes at the end of the year? And like, am I in the ballpark of like the industry standard for these type of things? I don't even know. And I mean, so many of those questions that you don't even know to ask. And a lot of it, the answer is kind of just fake it until you make it. But you'll find a sweet spot that kind of feels right to you, and that price point that feels right to you, and being really honest about where does your work stack up with others who are putting stuff out. And if it's better, then the cost and value should reflect that. And so there's just a lot of things to consider, and some of it you don't know until you get into the middle of it. But if you have a passion for it and a solid idea and a desire to figure it out, I think you'll overcome a lot of those like initial challenges, or at least be willing to sort of just figure it out as you go.
Yeah, definitely.
So there comes a point in time in many of our episodes where we've been listening to Corey and Dylan. They ask these good, thoughtful questions that are aiming toward trying to tell a story, and then at some point, like, I come in because I don't get things and start asking some stupid stuff. Instead of doing that right away, it'll probably get there.
That's not true. You have good questions.
It is true. I do have good questions, Nigel. I'll tell you why. My wife Amy is everybody loves cake. My wife loves cake.
Oh.
And I don't even know how it skipped my mind until literally today. I told her like what we were going to be talking about on the podcast. And one thing related to this now is just to speak about how much she loves cake is we a week ago, less than a week ago, like days ago, we recently installed a Ring video system for the exterior of our home, and which is still kind of cool. And every time like an alert goes off, like I have to rush to my phone to see it. And at the beginning of us recording this podcast, it went off, and I looked, and she had ordered dinner, and I recognized the bag as being a Cheesecake Factory bag. Oh. And so I know what happened there is I planted it, and she just like had to. Anyway, it was. I love you, Amy. And
my kind of person.
I love you, and I saw that.
Cake? I need cake.
But so she has been texting me since questions, actually.
Oh,
awesome.
She's just got a couple. The first one that she has, because Katie, you had sent you had emailed us a few pictures of your cakes, and Corey shared them for the YouTubers. Her first question is like, what's your favorite kind of cake to make? And I'm gonna kind of maybe qualify that a little bit, and this is where some ignorance might come through. When I'm looking at your cakes, or a lot of the really fancily decorated cakes, I'm thinking of kind of like two different categories. There's like the really pretty, like piping flowers, whatever, wedding cake kind of thing. And then there's the I'm going to make sculptures out of cake thing. And you've done both of those.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference?
Well, I love that question. And your wife sounds like my type of person. Like, I feel like I need to meet her. And that's such a great question. I pondered that a lot, because not unlike, making a podcast, you kind of get through doing several types of different cakes or episodes, and you learn kind of more of who you are and what your voice is, and for me, I think I haven't 100% found a style that's kind of like my niche, but at the same time, I think part of making cakes, I love learning it all. And like you said, so much art goes behind a lot of cakes. Like there is the sculpting, there is different with the buttercream, the more traditional, beautiful piping. I mean, that like impresses me so much. Like I look at some of those traditional wedding cakes and I think, my word, like, I do aspire to be, someone who can pipe like that. But I definitely think early on influences with learning during the time where fondant style was popular. And I know that a lot of people have some really strong feelings about fondant and its taste. But when I learned how to do cakes, that is what people wanted. And so I would say I've spent the majority of my time learning how to be successful with using fondant and yeah. So fondant has kind of always been my focus. It's been my love slash hate because it can be a little difficult to work with if you don't necessarily know what you're doing. But the things you can accomplish with fondant style cakes seem to be endless. You also have people who are just like incredible with it. One of the local people, Timbo Sullivan, he is like unapologetically like loves fondant and he is incredible. I mean, he's been on Food Network and he's won like the Thanksgiving Day episode. I think it was last year. And he's just like an amazing, awesome guy too. I don't know him personally, but I follow him and like he's just ridiculous with fondant. So I would say people like that have definitely been an influence in what I do. And like some of these cakes require learning, like real art forms, like sculpting or palette knife painting or even just like some of these people can do like busts of people and they look like amazing. And so I don't necessarily know that people really understand with the use of Pinterest and some of the awesome TV shows. I think they think all bakers know how to do all styles of cakes, but that's why I love your question, Kendall, because I feel like I'm learning as I go a lot of times, and I've invested some time in learning some of the art practices like palette knife painting and things like that. So I don't know that I necessarily have a specific style that I love. I would say I'm most experienced with a fondant style cake. Now, like I said, people have strong feelings about fondant. They don't necessarily love the taste, and I totally respect that. So I have learned how to sharpen my skills when it comes to buttercream and royal icing and some of those other more traditional styles. So
Yeah. My wife is, I can tell you that she's definitely in the I don't like fondant camp.
yes.
I'm not sure that she's so extremist about it, but as others might be. But she actually, that was another question of hers, was it if you liked using fondant, or is it just a means to an end to make something look in a certain way? And I think you already kind of answered that. It's like when you got started, there's an expectation for it, right?
Yes.
You brought up a good point in that answer, Kate, and it's just like the expectation because of Pinterest and a lot of these competitive baking shows is that you're a master airbrush artist, a master sculptor, a master portrait artist, like because that's a wide range of skill sets to ask of someone, and you pull it off with like such grace and like in such a simple, clean, understated way. Like your friend's cake that I just showed right before I stopped sharing, like just the cute little references to the show and the couch and the lobster and the coffee cup and the turkey with the glasses on, like it's just clean and crisp and you pull it off really well. So if you are faking it until you make it in these efforts to learn different styles, then you're doing it really, really, really well, from the photography side to the like what they look like, but also how they taste. I mean, I don't think people believe that it can taste that good when they look that good. Like that you had to somehow trade one for the other. And anybody that I've told needs to buy a cake from you, and if you're in the Central Ohio area, she's already got a waiting list, but you've got to try to get your name on the list. they bite into them and they're like, oh my gosh, the one that you did for my friends. So I have some friends that we all share a birthday very close to one another. And you did like this Jameson Bailey's, like amazing. I don't even know all the flavors that were in it, but it was so good.
A fancy
Well, thank you.
And the rest of Amy's questions were like kind of like this sweet, kind,
Oh,
lovey, how did you start a business from something you loved kind of questions that Dylan and Corey are great at coming up with. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a turn and start relating you to a tattoo artist. So when somebody goes in to get a tattoo, there's sort of two different ways that can go. One is like you bring in a photo of something or a drawing, or you have at least a very detailed picture in your mind of what you want. And then you have that short little consultation process, and they basically just pull off what it is you asked them to do. And then there's the other consultation process, which is, I don't know what I want. Maybe something like this. And then they just they take their own artistry and they come up with something that they think looks cool. And then they show it to you. And that's your starting point. And then you kind of go from there. So you're very much leaning on their creativity instead of just sort of their fundamentals in artwork. So for you, do you get both of those things in a sort of like a pre-bake consultation process? People are like, I just want something that looks cool, but that's all I really know. Or do you get like, it needs to be this? And then, so talk about that for a minute.
Or like, since we just talked about the Friends cake, give me the Jennifer Aniston haircut.
right.
Can you do this?
That exactly. And I better look like her.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think you nailed it with that question. I think that's part of it with, you never know what type of customer you're going to get. And I do the majority of my consulting through social media right now. Sadly, since we can't necessarily meet in person. And I think you nailed it. I mean, that's a perfect like example of what I go through. I mean, there's people that are like, I want this cake, exactly. And I always say, because I have a style, even though I try my best to make it look exactly like that picture, there's still a process that another baker or cake artist went through to get to that point. And I don't necessarily know that 100%. So I always say I will get it as close as possible. Or you do have people who are like, just make something unique, like give me a color scheme, give me invitation to work off of, or something, for their event that is kind of the key element or piece for the decor. And so I've definitely been able to like even take that and work off of that. Or you do have the people who are just like, I don't even know what flavor of cake I want. And so I think, for me, I love the challenge of all of that. And I want the customer to be exactly who they are in that process, and then end up with what they want. I might ask, deeper questions about things, but there is part of me that fears a little bit I have no idea, customer, because I always want to know what the expectation is. And so it is like more of that people communicating piece of it. And there are people who really don't care. I mean, there are people that are like, okay, I just want a cake. I don't care. I don't get a lot of those people, but it doesn't need to be a 12-day process of figuring out.
I would bake somebody and I don't care cake.
Yeah. It's going to say, I don't care. For goodness sakes. So I think you nailed it. I mean, that's perfectly the picture. And it makes me laugh a little bit because my husband has a couple tattoos, and the one I actually did create for him. So he was the customer that went in with, this is just what I want, so please do it.
Mhm. For sure. And then here's one that I've seen bits and pieces of cake shows, and something that I've always kind of wondered. When you see those shows, like sometimes they make a point to tell you that like all of the different pieces are edible, even though they look like they might not be. And but almost in a weird, like, not novel way, but like in a this is a way it's supposed to be kind of way. And then other times, like, there's other things where it's like clearly that's not edible.
Yes.
Is there any kind of purist push there, or is there any kind of like does it feel like cheating if you add a detail that's inedible? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Definitely makes sense. And that's like, totally, there are people in one camp or the other with whether you should put all edible things or non-edible things. And most of my cakes, I would strive to put everything absolutely 100% edible. Even with the flowers that are fresh flowers I use, it's important that you're not putting something on the cake that is toxic 100%. So some of the cakes I lean towards using roses or sunflowers, things that would not poison the customer. It's probably the best. But in some of my other cakes, like I have done like the Death Star, and that
are those edible LEDs?
Yeah, those are edible LEDs.
Cool.
I mean, I do have like light features like that. And so it is important to make note, to the customer that that's something you need to remove. I mean, that's really important.
Take the electricity out of the cake.
Like, I'm good, but I don't think I can make edible light. I don't know.
Well, the reason I pulled that one up.
You're learning still.
Yes, I'm learning. I'm in the middle of it. So that's where.
The reason I pulled that flower box up, Katie, because like the wood slats on the side and even like the metal plates, like that looks so realistic. And I know that's all like amazing. Just.
Yes. I mean, that's the gift of fondant right there.
Yeah.
You can get some really realistic looks if you know what you're doing. And that was definitely a fun technique to learn. And I've made like a whiskey barrel cake that kind of had the same, not the crackle effect, but yeah. And I mean, I think I fooled some people. For my grandma's cake, I did it similar to like a crate of flowers. And I ended up using sugar flowers for the top of it. But she literally did not know it was real. I mean, she walked up to it, saw all these other cupcakes I had made, and she was like, "Oh, this looks so nice." And they're like, "Do you see the cake?" And she was like, "No, there's a cake. I see the cupcake." And then the rest of the party, she took all her friends up to that cake, and they're like, "Do you see the cake?" So
that's sweet.
I mean, and it was kind of a sweet moment because my grandpa, he was an artist, and sadly he's passed since that birthday party, but he came up to me and told me that cake, he's like, "I don't know how you got such, turned a cake into something so like beat up and rough and ugly." And I'm like, "What?" Not ugly, it's distressed.
Rustic.
But, I feel like, I guess I'll take a compliment. It looked real to him.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, I personally, to answer the question about whether I'm not above sticking toys on a cake or something fun for my kids.
Sure.
But I do think I'm at a place now where people are like, "Oh, did you like sculpt that or make that?" So that's always kind of fun,
Yeah.
But I've made, those toppers that are, I've made a goofy topper that was challenging, and that takes time. And sometimes if people are wanting a cake and, within a certain time frame, I just can't do that. And so I'm definitely not above giving the customer what they want. I mean, I've put Mario and Luigi on top of a cake that was a toy, and I've put monster trucks and things like that. And
I feel
you know,
like
the
Dylan and
customer-
Corey are your only customers.
yeah. Right. I mean,
For
not
all these
naming
cakes that you're yeah, it's a these are all for Corey, weren't they?
right. But I'm definitely not above doing that. But I totally see how important it is to be honest about what type of baker you are, and if you've put something that should not be consumed on the cake.
Yeah. Don't eat Goofy.
Yeah, don't eat Goofy.
And then another question I have is cost. So like do you have to price these things up by job? Like are you putting it together in your head like this is going to take me however long, and then you have a rate that you put on it? Do you have a flat rate for anything, or just that's a weird business question, but I am curious.
No, I think that's great because Corey touched on that a little bit ago about pricing. That's probably the most challenging thing for me is having an understanding. And the more, for me, the more cakes I do, the more cupcakes I offer, the more research I do about where. And, for me personally, I like to buy the majority of my ingredients and supplies locally. That's part of who I am as a person. I want to support small business. So my prices reflect a little bit of a higher cost because I do purchase from a locally owned cake supply store. But having said that, the pricing aspect gets easier as you get a little bit more familiar with what you're doing. And then also, part of that is there's so many tools available now. Like there's so many apps that will, like, specific apps for like bakeries or home bakers or even like whatever you're wanting to like sell, that helps you see clearly like, oh, this is what I'm spending, this is what I'm making, these are the supplies I have in stock. And so I think for me personally, my cakes start at a spot and then it goes up as you add elements to the cake. So it's a very custom process. I've made similar cakes, like I've made the Death Star cake twice. So I knew what that would be like. But you do have the aspect of time. The second time it didn't take me as long. So, how do you, it's difficult. I mean, I think no matter what you're doing, what you're offering, it's always challenging and there's so many variables to consider, but it's not impossible. I mean, you get better and more comfortable with that. And I just try to be upfront and honest with what something's going to cost, and the person can choose, to downgrade or, make it more or go with someone else, because there are so many bakers out there and they're offering things on different levels. There are bakers that don't touch fondant. I mean, they're like, I do buttercream. That's who I am. And if that's who you want to be your cake decorator, that's great. You know what I mean? And so I think there's customers out there for me and there's customers out there for other bakers. And I'm totally comfortable with that.
I really wanted to make a joke about you having to build the Death Star a second time, but that's a geek joke.
How many Death Stars can you possibly make?
Right?
At least two.
At least two. There's two that were out there.
I hearing you answer some of the questions reminds me of somebody said, I don't know who it is, you don't find a passion, you create one. And I think a lot of people are trying to look for a passion, not realizing that that's often developed over time, and they created it by honing their skills or technical ability around whatever their passion might be. And I don't mean literally just you create one like you create a singular cake. The amount of time and effort and learning and trial by error or trial by fire, you got to make things quick, you got to make things huge. You've got to do all different kinds of things. So you've clearly, for me, you've created a passion that might have already existed, but you developed it with lots of time and effort. And I think it's important to establish some level of expertise, because fortunately for you, we aren't your only customers. You keep yourself really busy. So I think it's important to establish a little bit of the quality of your work and your expertise for the next question, which no one expects you to be an expert, but I do expect you to be able to brag a little bit here in your answer. So it's okay. We were talking about the gig economy, and there's lots of small business owners, and people who want to be entrepreneurs. So with that in mind, what do you think separates the people who succeed, and you certainly hit a level of success, from those who fail, or even worse, those who don't even try? And again, we don't expect you to be an economic expert, but you get to brag a little bit here because you've done a lot of things very well to be where you are. So what have you seen from other businesses or other people who never started on businesses who failed versus where you are, and what's gotten you to the point that you're at?
Yeah. Well, you touched on it there. The quality of what I give to someone matters to me deeply. I mean, I try to even go above and beyond what I feel like the bar of expectation is. And I hope I do that. That is so important to me. I take on less orders because the quality matters to me that much. There are people out there who are capable of doing the quality that I can do, but can do it on a massive scale. And that's amazing. But knowing myself, like that quality over quantity is always important to me. And so even though I probably don't make as many cakes as, truly I'm in the middle of, some people are like, I will make 1 cake a month and that's it, and some people are like, well, I made like 100 cakes this week. And I am definitely in the middle there, that for me, my quality suffers as my quantity gets greater and greater, because the process of making the cakes and engaging with the people matters to me greatly. And so for me, that was just a standard I set. As far as, starting it, I had no idea how many cakes I could make in 1 week, or cupcakes, or customers I could take on. And so there was that fear of, am I going to be able to be smart enough to like pull back or push myself, And so I think, as you, like Corey said, you kind of fake it till you make it, and you get yourself into it, and you have people that support you, and you just have to kind of move forward with it. And I think some people get stopped up on and burnt out when they don't have realistic expectations for what this journey looks like. I mean, I had a real clear idea because I grew up, knowing the owners of the coffee shop that I worked in, and saw firsthand it's hard, it's rewarding, and it's not impossible. There's sacrifices you will make, but through all of it, you really do get to do your passion and feel that reward in doing that. And so I think, I'm not sure I have like the best answer as far as, why some people it just runs its course, and there was, speaking of like underground pizza, there was like this underground chicken sandwich place that popped up, in the middle of the pandemic. And it was fun because, we could get it through DoorDash. And so my husband and I love trying all different types of food and stuff. So we got this chicken sandwich one day, and then it was like, a few weeks later, it had run its course and the people were done. And it's like, you just don't know, you don't know how much planning went behind that, or what expectations they had set out. And so for me, I'm learning as I go with the resources I have. And a lot of the things I've done in life have kind of prepared me to look at this realistically and move forward with it. So I would say it's not impossible. It does take sacrifice. There are resources out there that can make it easier for you if you really feel like this is a good direction for you to open, whether it's within your home, or you're striving to be like a brick and mortar small business someday.
Well, whatever you set out to do, it's really working for you. And if imitation is the highest form of flattery, then you should certainly feel flattered, because I texted you the other day and I said, "Oh my gosh, are you aware of this company?" And it's like they stole your name, they stole the way you take photos, they stole like a lot of your cakes are like straight up carbon copies of theirs, or theirs of yours rather.
Yeah.
And yeah, same name, same everything. So um if people want to follow you, what's the best way to do that? What's the best way? Like, for sure, if you're in the Central Ohio area, get on her wait list and get yourself a cake. You will be so glad that you did. But how should people follow? Like, what are your hopes for Kindness Batters in the future, and just the remaining handful of minutes we have?
Yeah, so I have a page on Facebook, which is Kindness Batters. I do get a lot of confusion with that other Kindness Batters. When I first started, the name kind of it was born out of this like idea that I definitely wanted kindness to be a part of it. And then my mom was like, Kindness Batters, KB, Katie Berkheimer, Kindness Batters. It just works. And so I searched and there was no other Kindness Batters. And then 6 months later, there was another Kindness Batters, and it's in Florida. And I think it's awesome. Because obviously you want more kindness to be out there. But they are a vegan bakery. So that will be noted. If you do search Kindness Batters, it'll say like a vegan, Kindness Batters vegan bakery or something like that, which is totally cool. But yes, Facebook, I do a lot of my communicating through that, offer my availability and things through that. Also, Kindness Batters Instagram, is a really clear way to kind of just follow and see some of the work I put out there, some of the tips I put out there. I get a lot of other bakers that, ask questions, and I love connecting with other bakers. I am so grateful for the baking community, not only in Ohio and Columbus, but being able to connect with some of my friends. I went to Anderson University in Indiana, and I have a lot of friends there who also bake, or who want to bake a cake for their child or their mom or their dad or their husband or whatever. And so they ask just random questions sometimes. And I love being a resource that way. And to touch on that, that's kind of where my heart still is. I would love to teach classes someday about how to do, simple cakes, or just kind of take, just like easy and approachable items and turn it into something that looks great. And so that's definitely the heartbeat that I have. I don't have that ambition to be a brick and mortar, but it's definitely not something I've taken off the table. So I definitely love just connecting with people. So please feel free to reach out. Like I said, I have people I've never met that, follow my page and connect with me in Indiana, in Vermont, in California, in Kentucky, all over the place. It's, that's the gift of social media, I think, is that you can put your product out there and it reaches like everywhere, not as many places as you guys in your podcast, but but I'll get there.
I wish there were a way to beam your cakes to our listeners all over the world, because that would be really cool, just so they could get a taste of what we're talking about. But regardless, I think you've offered like some really thoughtful tips to people who, like we've said multiple times now, they have that thing that they're really passionate about doing. I'm looking at you, Haz, and your breads that look wonderful. And they're like, they could easily turn that into a successful business on the side, more than just supplementary income, but like a legit thing that stands on its own. And who knows what the limits are from there. But I think you're doing a great thing. And just, we haven't touched on it yet, but one of the things you said you love to do is just, you like to put a word, like a special word with your orders. And with everything going on in our world already in 2021, like, we can't have enough kindness. So I think that would be a really great way to end, is for you to talk about what you like to do with that, like, little sweet note or little sweet word of encouragement or hope to people.
Yeah, I'm always pondering how I can spread kindness. I don't want it to be just like a gimmicky thing. I want it to really be felt by whoever I interact with. And so I found these kindness cards, and they just are like really simple, small sayings, but I think, that's what makes a difference. And so I want to just pass on, just a simple, encouraging word. I don't know some of my customers personally, but if I can just make them pause and remember that they're important or I appreciate them, that's like super important to me. And so, yeah, I think that's just kind of more of the direction I want to take it. I did a raffle for our local food bank, and people bought $5 tickets, got in a raffle, and could win a cake. And so that was something else that I kind of want to move forward doing to spread kindness.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on to the show. I hope you just have orders for the rest of the year after this episode. And yeah, I could see this really branching out if you wanted it to, because the heartbeat behind what you're doing is awesome. And you've been a great guest. And guys, anything else from you?
All
That's
set.
it.
All right. So thank you, Katie of Kindness Batters. Be sure to follow her on social. Order yourself a cake if you're in the Central Ohio area or willing to drive a little bit. Thank you to Artius Man, one of our affiliates. Be sure to go to artiusman.com, fill your cart with an order of men's grooming products. Use the promo code The Middle to get 25% off your first order. And we will see you guys next week on From the Middle.
Thank you.
Be kind.